Does size matter? Yes, folks, we're going to be talking about March size. Okay? A very hot topic in Evony. And for all of you dirty minded people that saw the thumbnail to this video and started thinking a completely different thing, here's some soap. Go wash your brains out. Hi, and welcome to Red Ebony. I am Akayasha. You can call me Aka. Now, the topic of March size is something that has always fascinated me. Probably because I never really got a clear explanation for it. You know? And I've tried my best to seek out the answer for that. You might have seen one of the previous videos I did with Evony Academy. Okay? We were touching on topics related to March size. Now, this time, I had a sit down with a very prominent figure in the Evony community. Some of you might know him. It's a guy that goes by the name of X-Wing Pilot. Now, I'll tell you guys straight up. Me and X-Wing, we're cool. Okay? We are good. But when we started having this conversation, it got a bit heated. You know? It got a bit heated. And we were going back and forth on the thing, talking about buffs and March size. And it got to a point where we were practically downright brawling. Okay? I was like, no, buffs are better. You take this. And then he comes back and he's like, no, March size is better. You take this. And this. And this. So, needless to say, it was a very hot conversation. But after a while, we cooled down, everything became chill, and we started talking about, okay, what is the interaction between March size and buffs, and when is it better to have one or the other? So, if you're interested in listening to that conversation, without further ado, here you go. Alrighty. So, X-Wing, my man, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you very much. And I just I told the guys about how we were, we were brawling over this thing, this March size business. So yeah, now that we're cool, we're calm. I want us to talk about it a bit and break it down so that everyone can, really get a sense of what we're talking about here and where the argument is coming from.
Yeah,
Is that okay?
yeah, that sounds good. Yeah,
Okay. All
happy
right.
to do
That's
so.
cool. Okay. So let's, first thing, let's break down the relationship between March size and attack.
All right. So the relationship is basically accounting for two different types of buff here.
Okay.
We've got your march size, your attack,
hmm
and the two of them are multiplied together to give you a total attack. Now,
Okay.
if you want to
Okay.
increase
Can
one,
I?
it's going to increase the other.
Okay. Can I pause you there for a second? So basically, that means that okay, let's say you have a march, all right, and for simplicity, we're going to use we're going to say that you have one tier of troops in there. So let's say you
hmm
have T13s. So we're basically saying that the total, if you want to call it attack power of your march is basically the number of troops you have in there times whatever their attack stat is. Is that right?
It's close. There's a little bit more to it, but yeah, that's pretty much the calculation. You're looking at
Okay.
the total amount of troops and the total amount of buffs that you're applying to those troops,
Mhm.
um, which is also multiplied by that troop's base attack.
Okay. Okay, that's cool. I wanted to confirm that with you because I've covered this I've gone through this in a previous video, and I just wanted to make sure that your views on the stuff was the same. Okay, all right. So you were saying about the march and attack.
Yeah, if you're looking at the attack buff,
Mm-hmm.
you're basically adding all the different sources that you get from research and generals, all the different places you can get attack buffs from,
Mm-hmm.
and multiplying it by the base attack. And that will end up giving you results of thousands of buffs, right? Thousands of percents.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
So anywhere from you start the game at 0 and people are now hitting over 5,000% buffs. So that's one side of the equation. You
Okay.
can get up to 5,000 something. Now, the other side is going to be how many troops have that buff.
Mhm.
So that's going to start with your rally spot. That is the source of all your march size, depending on whatever level it is. I think K40 is around 550,000, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then you're multiplying all your march size buffs against that number,
Mhm.
which ends up giving you a total troops in that march or layer, as you would say, for like a monster attack, right?
Yeah.
But that's giving you a number in the millions.
Mhm.
So when you're multiplying these two numbers together, if you're increasing one or the other, obviously increasing the millions is going to give you a higher total attack afterwards than it would by increasing the thousand.
Okay.
Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, mathematically that's how it works out. So okay, so that's cool. So since the march size, or the number of troops that we can fit in, it tends to be the bigger number. That's why, even when you multiply it by the attack percentage, it's really high.
And
All
there's
right.
some great examples of this. If you think about rallies that we send,
Mm-hmm.
there's no rally setter or no all stars team or a rally team that's going to tell you, yeah, let's go for a smaller rally size with
Fair enough.
the rally setter gets higher buffs, or
Okay.
on a T1 trap, right? The T1 trap, you're getting more troops with a lower buff to make that T1 layer effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes perfect sense. That makes sense. I think it's easier for people to conceptualize when you're looking at it from a rally as opposed to your march size. But yeah, that's a very good point. Okay, so key question now. All right, key question. So we're saying that the overall power of your march is a function of the march size and the attack that you have. So which is better? Okay. If you are faced with the choice of getting more buffs or getting more march size, which is better?
Mhm.
Because this is
Yeah,
this is
this is
where this
the
is yeah this is where our fight started, right? So,
yeah, yeah.
so yeah, okay. So let's break it down. Which is better?
All right. So obviously, from our talk earlier, there's a lot of different scenarios where one will be better than the other.
Mhm.
Um, let's start with the rally, the massive rally. If your rally is not full, if your team cannot fill your rally, the march size increase is going to give you more troops into that rally,
Mhm.
which will increase your rally's total attack. But if your rally is full already and you're kicking some people out of the rally, the higher buffs will just improve the attack power of the troops within the rally because the additional troops aren't going to make it in. So in that case, you kind of have to determine, is your rally getting filled every single time? Then you may not need
Mhm.
the march size.
Mhm.
Or
Okay,
if it's
that's
not getting
that's very
filled,
cool.
the march size will make your team do better.
Mhm.
Now we look at solos. The solo is all about the total attack.
Yeah.
The solo is you're trying to do as much damage as possible to a player, hopefully clear them. The larger march size is is always going to help you as long as it's a significant march size increase. You're not sacrificing 200% attack for a 1% march size increase. There is a balance in that.
Mhm.
But if it's a 10% march size increase, that's going to be huge, especially as you get higher level keep. Around K35, march size is going to be priority.
Okay, so what you're saying is that, from if you're doing solos, right, then you're saying that the march size is better. If you're doing rallies,
And
then it depends on what your specific situation is and whether you're filling up the rallies or not.
right.
Okay.
And of course, there's going to be rare circumstances where one is better than the other. Maybe your rally team can fill for 30 minutes or an hour,
Mhm.
and then your players get zeroed. You can't fill it anymore. Maybe it is better to stick with the march size focused march for joining if you're one of the players that stays in the rally longer.
Mm. Well, I guess, I guess if based on that argument, it will probably end up working out that way because if we're saying that march size is better for, for solos, and a lot of people are picking their generals based on, the solo factor, then they end up using those generals for the rallies anyway.
Very true. Very
Yeah.
true.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to tell you there is a caveat, which is what causes most arguments like ours.
Yeah.
Uh, when you splat a rally, like a T11 is always going to splat. It,
Mhm.
I use the word splat. It's still going to do damage, but all the troops are going to die.
Yeah.
You're sending more troops with low buffs. You're giving away more points for less
Yeah.
individual
I have
points ratio.
I have numerous experiences of that. Yes.
Yes. And same thing applies to solos, right? If you're not clearing the guy, more troops will end up giving them more points. So
Mm,
it, there's never going to be a win to this argument.
mm,
There's always going to be someone who feels strongly one way or more strongly the other way. I
mm,
lean on the side of get the march size. I'm going for the full clear. I'm going to stay in the rallies and do as much damage as possible myself,
mm,
except when I'm the setter,
mm.
which yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
now I'm the setter, so it's different.
Yeah. I'm more towards the buff side. For some reason, for me, it just feels, I guess it feels more tangible because it's like I can see clearly the improvement my March makes when I know that my buffs have gone from, let's say, 1500 to 1600. Okay. But
Mhm.
seeing the benefit of getting my March size to increase from, let's say, 10% to 12%. Okay. In some situations, I don't know. Like, obviously, if we're talking of significant increases, like if you're putting on, like if you have your regular March and you're putting on a senior March buff, that one is that's a big enough difference that you can see it clearly. But if you're talking about like like small differences like 2%, 3%, I don't know. For me, it's just not. That's why I lean more on the side of buffs. But I'll be honest, your argument makes perfect sense to me. That's why I calm down. That's why I stop swinging the punches. Okay. So yeah. I think what you're saying about the March size makes sense. But let me ask you this now, because this is a point that you brought up that I think it's an interesting point to elaborate on. And it's how does this interplay between your March size and your attack your buffs, how does it change as you develop? As you get bigger, as you get to higher keep levels.
Yeah, the big factor here is gonna be in your rally spot.
Mhm.
As your rally spot increases, that base number that you're multiplying by your march size buff increases. So
Okay.
march size becomes increasingly more effective as you level up,
Ah.
whereas the buffs are more important for, levels 1 through 20 keep.
Mhm.
The buff increase is gonna be where you go, but once you hit like keep level 20 and 25 even, you start to look at, okay, now which one's going to actually add more march size or buffs. Um, and and that key factor is going to be your rally spot.
Okay, okay. So for example, like we were talking about earlier, I think the base for the K39 is something like 500K. And I think when you go to K40, it goes up to like 550, something like that. I'll have to check to make sure. What you're saying is that because that base is increasing as you go higher, so the benefit of the extra of the march size that you get becomes more visible.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at a K40, that 50,000 troop increase for the base
Mhm.
march size,
Yeah.
most people around K40 have about 800% march size from all of their march size buffs from other sources. So
Okay.
you multiply 800% times 50, times the 50,000, and you're going to end up getting a pretty big increase. Versus if you didn't go upgrade that building and went instead to focus on getting some buffs, you could increase your buffs by like 100%. It's not going to be the same number. The march
Okay.
size that you gain from leveling that rally spot is going to be much higher in terms of attack power
Mhm.
than by increasing your buffs.
All right, that's fine. That's fine. The next thing that we talked about, and this is is also part of where the where the heat came about was we're talking about generals, okay? And I was like, okay, I had this actual dilemma, right? So when Hestia was released, okay, Hestia was looking good, she was looking great, and I had all intention of using Hestia. And then I think it was like a week later or something, or two, something like that. Like really next minute, Evony released Washington Prime. Okay. Which was, I mean, it was annoying because it was like we just got this, this calf goddess, and I was really excited and everything, and then now we have this guy, and Washington Prime just comes in and breaks the whole just messes up the whole situation for everyone. Okay, so so yeah, okay, so I was telling you that I use Hannibal as my PvP main general right now, and both of them are compatible with Hannibal. And I was looking at their stats as assistants. Okay. And from what I saw, Hestia has better stats, the buffs as an assistant. The problem is that she doesn't have the march size. Meanwhile,
Mm.
Washington Prime is crazy on the march size. So the question now is that in this situation, how do you break it down and which way do you go?
Yeah. So the difference. So you're K40, you said, right?
The 39. I'm 40 is on the way.
All right. So the difference between the two is you're getting 20% more attack with Hestia, right?
Okay.
Which
Mhm.
definitely it looks cooler. I'll give you that. It looks cooler to have a higher attack percent.
Mhm.
Um, the problem is that even for a K40, you are going to gain about what is it, 140,000 more troops in your march by using Washington Prime
Mm.
as the assistant. And Hestia gives you about 5% more HP and 45% more defense, which basically, if you think about that, it's really that's the equivalent of adding like 35%, or
Mm.
maybe 30,
Mm.
25%, 22.5%, whatever HP. It's the same, right? So
Yeah.
you're gaining about 30% HP defense combination and 20% attack by using Hestia,
Mhm.
but you're losing 140,000 troops. So if you multiplied your 140,000 troops by your total attack buffs, the difference here, I'm looking at it as about 70 billion total attack difference. 12 billion total attack, 70 billion total stat difference to go with Washington Prime. So
That's a lot.
just because you have higher buffs, increasing your march size that significantly is is bringing so much more power to your march. So absolutely, Washington Prime is hands down top assistant, and it's not even close.
Okay. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I can't fault your argument there for that one. So, Hestia. Oh, my sweet Hestia. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's put that one aside. Okay. I get the point. Yeah, I agree with you. Washington Prime is probably the better one to go with, and it's probably the best, let's say, carve assistant in the game. But let me give you, there's a different situation. Okay. So I'm looking at my ground march, right? And I currently use Alessandra as my ground assistant. Now I'm trying to see if I could upgrade her a bit. Okay. And going through the different options that I have, and I have Forkbeard, right? Now I'm
Mm.
looking at Forkbeard, and from their stats as assistants, Forkbeard has, higher attack, has higher defense. But Alessandra has better HP. However, this with this argument of march size and stuff that we've gone through, it got me thinking. And I'm looking at the two. Alessandra has 8% march size. Forkbeard gets, I believe, 5% or so from his covenant. So we're only talking about like a difference of 3% march size when we're looking at the difference in buffs. So how do you analyze this situation for which one is better?
So this one is interesting. Um, Now, I'm gonna say to go with the higher march size general, Alessandra in this case.
Okay.
But even though it's only a 3%, the reason is Alessandra also has a 5%, I'm sorry, a 15% higher HP.
Mhm.
So for the ground troops, even though you're going to gain, oh, what is it, 45% attack by going with Swain as an assistant, the 15% HP that you get is going to give you so much more survivability for your ground march. If
Mm,
you're thinking in the battle, when your ground marches go out against a defender, first thing that happens is the defensive ground is going to attack your ground first. So it's deceptive to think that my I'm adding attack to my ground so it can do more damage, but your ground first has to survive that hit,
mm,
the first attack from the defensive ground.
mm.
And so the extra march size that you're bringing is mitigated, right? It's decreased by that first attack. You might lose that extra 3% that you had just by getting attacked by the enemy.
Yeah.
So because Alessandra has a higher HP, that's going to help more of your troops survive and get through to attack in return.
Mhm.
So they're almost virtually equal, except if when you go to the mechanics of the battle, Elise Alessandra is going to be better than Elise Swain.
Mm. Okay, okay, okay. That's interesting. That's interesting. This point you made though, does that only apply for ground troops?
Uh, it applies differently to every type of march. So if you're looking at a cav march, for example, they're also taking hits from ranged before they get to attack. And if you're looking at a ranged march, it's kind of the opposite. They're not taking any hits before they get to attack. So the more power you have in your ranged march, the more total attack power, the
Mm.
better.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
and and siege is similar to ground, as siege gets attacked by the defender first before they get to respond.
Hmm.
So in a siege march, it's almost better to go with the buffs than the march size, except that you can actually pick which layer of siege you're sending.
Hmm.
And if you go with a T11, for example, you're not worried about getting attacked first. Or if you send T13, you're not typically getting attacked first before you can hit their high tiers.
Okay.
So it's back and forth on siege, but ground is the only caveat where you have to take a hit first.
Mm. Okay, okay. I think that's a good segue to the other point that I was thinking about, because most of the stuff that we looked at with the march size were really focusing on the attack stats. But the question is, when you have the defense and the HP, how do those play in, when, because like for example, now we're talking about the ground and you're saying that okay, the Alessandra with the better HP. So if you have a situation where, let's say, hypothetical situation, you have a general that is losing on the march size part, but is doing significantly better on the defense and the HP. How do you think that affects the overall march in general?
Yeah, well, the cool thing about March size is that it's applying a total power equally to all 3 of the buffs: attack, defense, and HP.
Okay.
So, by decreasing it, you are decreasing your attack, your defense, and your HP.
Mhm.
So it applies pretty much the same way as we were talking about the ground march. If you're decreasing your total HP of the march, your march is gonna have less attack to respond with versus, if you're looking at a decrease in HP on your ranged troops, well, your ranged is either gonna clear the city or it's gonna die. Um, you're not typically taking defensive hits with your range to try to survive and keep attacking.
Yeah. So the HP in that for the range might not be that significant compared to the ground.
Yeah, it is if you're using it as a reinforcing march or maybe in buildings, or if you're trying to solo a keep where it's a very similar power. The
Mm,
HP is going to help you out quite a bit. Uh, on defense, HP for range is very important, but
mm,
in attacking, the attack buff for ranged is the most important.
okay. So I guess, when we're looking at it, obviously we need to look at the if for example we're comparing two different generals, we need to look at, what the difference in the march size is. Need to take into account the type of march or the type of troops that we're looking at, and also factor in, where the defense and the HP comes into play. Think does that kind of package everything okay?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that sounds accurate. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's fine. That's fine. Okay. So the next question I want to ask you is, all right, we've gone through all the stuff that we've gone through here. We've looked at the generals, we've talked about the march size and stuff like that. So what happens if someone says, you know what, I'm not bothered with that. Okay. I'm not bothered with that. I have this general and I want to use this general. Can you paint a picture of what they're giving up or what they're losing by doing that kind of taking that kind of situation?
Oh yeah. Um, Definitely. When you do the math on this and you calculate the attack percents multiplied by the total troops you're sending into battle,
Hmm.
we're not talking about a few hundred points of damage difference and killing one extra troop or not. We're talking about billions and even trillions of attack power and HP power differences. And when I say power, I mean hit points per troop is much higher. So if you were to say stick with a free to play General Salt, for
Hmm.
example,
Okay.
instead of switching to, you mentioned Alessandra and considering going to Swain,
Hmm.
Salt's power is so significantly lower. I can use a K45 example, but in your example, we're talking like maybe 50 billion hit points difference.
Mm,
Now, if somebody's attacking you and you have 50 billion hit points less, it doesn't matter what game you're playing. It doesn't matter, what the mechanics are of that game.
mm,
If somebody attacks you and you're sacrificing 50 billion hit points, there's you're going to have a worse result, obviously.
mm,
And so not increasing your buffs and march size in total to get that hit points up, that's the whole purpose of the game. Get your march size up, get your buffs up. It,
mhm,
by going with a lesser general that is not taken into account how much actual march size, and how much attack I'm getting, which one's actually giving me the most overall improvement, and you stick with the general that's much lesser. You're basically helping the enemy at that point. You're helping them get more points. You're making yourself weaker, causing yourself more healing and more, you know, everything. It's worse all around to not consider the relationship between march size and your buffs when you're picking your generals.
okay. Okay. That's definitely something to think about. I think the way you framed it, what you're losing, I think it's a lot of people might need to really take a step back and evaluate the kind of generals that they're looking at. Yeah, that's good stuff, man. That's very interesting stuff. Okay, I think we're all good here. I mean, I don't know about everyone else, but I'm pretty clear on like the stuff that that we've talked about, and how march size can be an important factor in picking your generals. Obviously, buffs and stuff also play into it, but the relationship between them is, I think, very key. X-Wing man, thank you very much for for coming on. Really appreciate it, and really appreciate you breaking this down for us. Just to let everyone know, like, where can we find you? What kind of stuff do you have? Yeah,
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much, Aka, for letting me share your spotlight, man.
no problem, no
I'm a
problem.
subscriber. I follow you, and I love your. It's incredible what you do for the community. So just really appreciate it. If anyone wants to look, I have general spreadsheets. I have spreadsheets for quite a few things. I've also got a couple that are in the works. They're all posted in the GOT 289 Discord.
Okay,
You can find links to it throughout all the discords. I share the links to it in
okay. I
them.
can
Uh,
you can send me the links. I'll add them to the description of this video.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And in those sheets, I purposefully make these general comparison sheets so you can compare not just the buffs but also the total stats after the buffs, and make the call for yourself. If you want to sort it by whoever has the highest attack buff, you can do that and pick your generals. But yeah, it's all for this conversation you wanted to have, and I want to share that information with the community, give them the tool that they can use to make their decisions.
That's great, man. That's great. Really, I think that would be very helpful for a lot of people, but especially those that haven't seen your spreadsheets before. It's going to be mind blowing for some of them. So yeah, that would be cool. Thank you very much, man. Really appreciate you coming on again.
Thank you, Aka.
Yeah. All right. So thank you, everyone. Check out the links to the spreadsheets and the Discord in the description, and yeah, get your March size up to date, man. All right. Thank you very much. Aka and X Wing signing out.